Starlink, SpaceX's internet program designed to serve internet to the whole planet around the globe from space using mini satellites with high speed, low latency from, of course, Elon Musk. So, what is Starlink and how do I get to use it? Starlink promises to be the fastest and complete global coverage internet service provision ever created, bringing the internet to the whole world. At least twice as fast data transfer with half the latency of fiber cable land-based internet connections. Elon Musk's Starlink project, implemented in conjunction with SpaceX, will bring internet to the whole globe wirelessly. Starlink may be about to change the face of the internet and make the word 5G, earthbound antenna and landlines tantamount to the duck-billed platypus. Starlink is basically a division within the SpaceX company and, of course, the spaceflight company's growing network, which is being created, or, as Elon says, the constellation of orbital satellites. The development of the network began in 2015, with the first prototype Starlink satellites launched into orbit in 2018. Since then, SpaceX has deployed over 1,000 Starlink satellites into orbit across dozens of successful launches. And in January in 2021, it launched its first Starlink mission, with SpaceX launching 60 satellites from the Kennedy Space Center using the landable relaunchable Falcon 9 rocket. Subsequent launches, which delivered another 60 satellites into orbit on May the 26th, 2021, brought the total number of satellites in the constellation up to 1,737 satellites. Though some of those satellites are only prototypes, for testing, who knows what for, or non-operational units that aren't functioning parts of the network. So who knows what they are. There may be databases, or who knows what Elon's doing with those. More satellites are planned to follow on a continuous basis until global coverage is achieved. And in fact, since this was written, what I'm reading, more have also been sent up, I believe. Starlink intends to provide worldwide internet coverage, which hopes to change the whole landscape of the internet, and who controls it, of course. Elon Musk's Starlink aims to sell internet connections to almost anyone on the planet by way of growing a network of private mini-satellites orbiting in the sky overhead. If you go to the Starlink website, you can apply to be a beta tester. Starlink Beta is for users to try it out and for, of course, SpaceX to be able to test out their system. So during the beta phase, users can expect to see slow data speeds from 50 to 150 megabytes a second, which CNET actually tested in California and only got about 80 to 100 megabytes a second, and as low as 50. That's still enough, and they're developing it. So latency time from 20 milliseconds to 40 milliseconds in most locations over the next months, which this was written about a year ago, so should have been done by now, to enhance the Starlink system. Yeah. And there will also be brief periods of no connectivity at all, of course, while they are adjusting their system. As SpaceX launches more satellites and installs more ground stations to improve networking software, data speeds and latency and uptime will improve dramatically. Musk tweeted last February that he expects the service to double its top speeds up to 300 megabytes per second by the end of 2021. Let's see if that's true or not. According to the Starlink website, Up to 1 gigabytes per second are expected when fully functioning. 600 megabytes in tests with the Air Force are supposed to have been made wirelessly worldwide. And that high-speed internet across the globe will be available. So even in Tajikistan and in the mountains of Himalayas, there's a large percentage of the world that still has no internet access. So this is one of Elon's, of course, intentions. Although later on we'll get to talk about the mission to Mars and what Starlink might have to do with that. So he will be offering high-speed internet access across the globe with allegedly performance that far surpasses that of traditional satellite internet and a global network unbounded by ground infrastructure limitations. Starlink will deliver high-speed broadband internet to locations where access has previously been unreliable, expensive, or completely unavailable. And so Starlink is targeting services in the northern US and Canada in 2020, and now in 2021 is rapidly expanding to try to achieve near global coverage of the populated world. It hasn't achieved it, so he's still working on it, but he's getting there. It's already got a lot of satellites up in the air now. Elon Musk's company has disclosed that Starlink now serves more than 10,000 customers, which will be more by the time this gets published. The service is allegedly in the process of expanding pre-orders to even more potential customers. I'm on the list, by the way, in Thailand, with people currently living without access to high-speed internet as one of the top priorities, which is typical Elon, that he is offering to the countries who don't have access yet. I do not believe like Mark Zuckerberg for profit. Rather, he makes his profits from the people with big money, and he uses those profits to provide this service to people with less money. And I'm sure there will be price concessions for the poorer countries, which is something I'm going to write to Elon about at SpaceX and Starlink to see if I can get an answer. I'll send him a link to this video, because I believe that all Elon's intentions are ethical, and that all of his projects are actually, if stitched together as a tapestry, you will see that they are conscious. I don't know if it's intentional or not, but it works for me as destroying the carbon emission industry and many other industries, some of which he still has to use, carbon emission rockets, but he is destroying the people who control the petroleum industry and so on, and many other industries which destroy the earth and create inequalities in humanity. And he's trying to save humanity by making us a two-planet race, minimum two-planet race, for good reasons. And if you study astrophysics, you will know what those reasons are. Just a little bit about the satellites, as you see in the picture, that each satellite he has constructed weighing approximately 260 kilos, and they feature a compact flat panel design to minimize volume, which will allow for a dense launch stack to take full advantage of the launch capabilities of SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket. And so the actual satellites have been shaped and designed to fit as many into his own rocket, which is the benefit of SpaceX and Starlink being within the same company with the same owner, because the product gets designed to fit perfectly into the vehicle at maximum capacity. So what is an ion thruster or drive? An ion thruster or ion engine is a form of electric propulsion used for spacecraft propulsion. It creates thrust by accelerating ions using electricity. So an ion thruster basically ionizes a neutral gas in space by extracting some electrons out of atoms, creating a cloud of positive ions. These ion thrusters rely mainly on electrostatics as ions are accelerated by the Coulomb force along an electric field. These temporarily stored electrons are finally re-injected by a neutralizer in the cloud of ions after it has passed through the electrostatic grid. So the gas becomes neutral again and can freely disperse in space without any further electrical interaction with the thruster. In contrast, electromagnetic thrusters use the Lorentz force to accelerate all species, which means free electrons as well as positive and negative ions, in the same direction, whatever their electric charge, and are specifically referred to as plasma propulsion engines, where the electric field is not in the direction of the acceleration. But ion propulsion systems with Starlink are equipped with efficient ion thrusters powered by krypton that enables the satellites to orbit, raise, maneuver in space, and deorbit at the end of their useful life. Starlink is the first krypton-propelled spacecraft ever flown in the history of mankind. Makes you think of Superman, doesn't it? Krypton. The Starlink satellites are equipped with the Star Tracker, which is a custom-built in-house navigation sensor, which on each satellite tells the other satellites its altitude and position, and helps enable precision placement of broadband throughout. They're also going to be changing the method of transmission soon to a much faster method of transmission. The Star Tracker actually works by taking an image of the position of all the stars and all the other satellites, and then constantly realigning itself to remain optimized and keep the maximum broadband speed possible. So that's the Star Tracker component of SpaceX's Starlink satellites. And you can see a picture of how many Starlink satellites, which I took from the satellite map of the world, which is an online map, and filtered it through to show only Starlink satellites, which are flown up 60 at a time. To listen to the yayers and the nayers, Elon Musk's SpaceX wants permission to put another 30,000 more Starlink broadband satellites in orbit, despite already planning to send 12,000, of which is almost all up there now. 60 satellites above the Netherlands, as you can see in the photo, which we've seen before, this famous string of satellites seen in the sky. And many experts and astronomers are worried that it will create a lot of space junk. But the benefits is that this could make the internet completely wireless, accessible around the globe, including in the middle of the Pacific and Atlantic Ocean, which would mean great for marine safety and rescue, but not so good for astronomy. So astronomers on Earth, amateur astronomers are complaining, and also large telescopes on Earth. But with the new Webb telescope and satellite telescopes out in space, this isn't going to be a problem, because those satellites are further out than any of Elon Musk's Starlink mini satellites. So astronomy in general will not suffer, but amateur astronomers on Earth will. And so an internet link to allow them to use space telescopes, maybe mini telescopes, is something that Elon Musk could perhaps also provide to pacify them, to actually put accessible public space telescopes in space, so people can connect their telescope per internet to a space telescope and get a clear view of what Starlink is blocking. Would be a solution. Apart from the Star Tracker and the Ion Drive, the Starlink satellites also possess 4 powerful phased array antennas on each satellite, with allegedly an enormous amount of throughput that can be placed and redirected in a short time for an order of magnitude at lower cost, which means very fast speeds at low cost, worldwide, wireless. Will get slower if you have cloud coverage. In antenna theory, just in case you don't understand what a phased array is, it usually means an electronically scanned array. An array means a group, a set of computer-controlled antennas. And this creates a beam of radio waves that can be electronically steered to any point in different directions around it without actually moving the antennas. So it's solid state, it's not analog and moving, and therefore doesn't break easily because it has less moving parts. And these antennas are supposed to steer and optimize the beams between each satellite to reduce latency, which means lag. So for online gamers who are shooting each other in world championships, if you pull the trigger, you want that bullet to fire straight away in a game, not a split second after, because when the best against the best are playing, that latency is really, low latency is extremely important, and with other kinds of applications on the internet as well. So this is the singular solar array used on each satellite from SpaceX for the Starlink, and SpaceX has revealed details on its plans to darken the Starlink satellites and with what they call the dark sat. And Starlink satellites, in the conceptual view of most people, and in fact unfurls its single solar panel. So it's unfurled. The Starlink mega constellation is what Elon calls it, which originally consisted of at least about 12,000 satellites, but which will possibly reach up to 42,000 around the globe in low orbit. Should be serving up broadband internet from low Earth orbit, but as said before, worries astronomers, professional and amateur alike, after the first launch in 2019 proved what a bright multitude it would be. And so now, with more than 420 satellites in orbit and rising, and more to come soon, SpaceX is showing that it's taking astronomers' concerns seriously. Actually, there's a hell of a lot more than 420 satellites now, because since the writing of this, he has launched more. So that's a singular solar array. Elon's new document, which was posted on the Starlink website, clarifies why the satellites were so bright and what can be done to change the problem. And so, firstly, by raising their orbits earlier on and a hardware fix, and the sun visor I already mentioned, that will dim the satellites once they reach their operational altitude through changing their angles. And the first visor sat will launch with the next Starlink batch, which may have been launched already by the time. Yes, it's now June 2021, so it's being launched this month, June 2021, which is when I'm making this video. SpaceX said that all Starlink satellites will be equipped with deployable sun visors, and so this is called DarkSat. So SpaceX's first attempt to darken the satellites, dubbed DarkSat, was launched in last January, while the company announced it would put a dark coating on parts of this test case in order to reduce its brightness. For sure he hasn't done it on every satellite because it might bring detrimental effects, so he will have tried it on some. And so I should buy myself a telescope and start looking now at the Starlink satellites and compare them with photos of before DarkSat from other astronomers to see what difference it has actually made. Once I know this is implemented in general, so I know every satellite I'm looking at has DarkSat. After the launch of the Starlink satellites and many people saw with the naked eye the string of satellites. In fact, a lot of UFO reports were made on that day. After which has received complaints from astronomers, of course, that the Starlink satellites have been problematic for the astronomer community due to their brightness obscuring the view of the heavens, which Elon says is due to the solar panels and the angle that they are set at, and that it's being recalibrated. Stargazers around the world have witnessed unusual constellations made up of the low Earth orbit spacecraft, which is of course the Starlink satellites. And so after a lot of fuss was made about this in the astronomer community, Elon responded to a question about the brightness of the Starlink satellites on his Twitter platform. Elon said that this was due to the angle of the satellites, the solar panels, and the company was fixing it, and that a fix would make them less visible from Earth. They will still obscure the view of a star when they pass over, though, which is a point for astronomers to take into account, not just the brightness of the satellite, but the fact that they actually block the view with their physical presence. So based on user reports, Starlink trains are not very visible right now. This is allegedly because Starlink's company has reduced the brightness to avoid disturbing astronomers. There's still a lot of objects there blocking the view. Yeah. So these satellites are also allegedly particularly bright otherwise because of their size and the proximity to Earth. So they're reflecting the sunlight from close by. Large satellites are usually sent into higher orbit, so they don't reflect so easily, although we see them moving in their trajectories with the naked eye. And low-orbit satellites are obviously much smaller. Otherwise, they would fall down to Earth. And Elon said in Twitter, after Everyday Astronaut said, "Is there a reason they've been brighter and more noticeable lately? I feel like tons of people are spotting them and they went fairly unnoticed before." Elon responded, tweeted back that the solar panel angle during orbit raise and park was the problem and that they're fixing it. Yeah. So it will be interesting to see if Elon's satellite brightness reduction effort objectives to make the satellites generally invisible to the naked eye within a week of launch, and to minimize Starlink's impact on astronomy by darkening satellites so they do not saturate observatory detectors, using the SORSAT strategy with orientational role. Yeah, and should be in summer 2021. Yeah, launch 7, roll orbit raising satellites, and the Fly Sun visor demo. So we can look forward to seeing that when SpaceX puts it up on YouTube. And hopefully I'll be able to make another video to cover that matter. Ajahn Spencer as the webmaster, signing off. I believe Elon Musk's SpaceX Starlink project is about to change the whole theater and landscape of what we call the internet in this day and age, and also cause a swing in the balance of power of who controls it. Starlink will also surely generate inspiration for how people will use satellite technology for other applications and implementations in the future. And looking ahead, maybe Starlink might not just connect us around the globe, but also connect us between Mars and Earth, which I believe Elon is planning, hence the name Starlink, not Earthlink. I truly believe that Starlink will play a major role in most of the missions to Mars. both from Elon Musk and, of course, in service to NASA and other companies. And so the story will continue with a matrix of networks around the solar system one day in the future, and perhaps around the solar system, in order to relay warnings about things coming in from the Kuiper Belt and the massive cloud of asteroids and rocks which lie around our solar system. So that's all from me for today with the Webmaster channel on YouTube. Hoping that this was informative and gave you a better idea about what Starlink is and what it might perhaps become, in my imagination. It's the Webmaster, otherwise known as Ajahn Spencer, signing off.